Yo, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name is Jody Sedrick, as you know, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And I tell you, there's one thing that's not so fun about being a dad is when your kid hits 30, you realize you're not a young chicken anymore. So, but yeah, that's such is life. And then my other son has a birthday this coming week, and yeah, it's just insane how fast things go. So, but I'm super excited. I have a really good friend, a guy that I have mad respect for. Shad Stoker is my guest today. How you doing, my brother?
Fantastic, Jody. How are you?
You're always fantastic, and I just love that. I mean, you always have great energy. You're always really positive, and I love that because it's easy, as you know, to get into the negative.
Very easy.
It's really easy.
Too
So
easy,
before we jump,
unfortunately.
it is too easy. It's almost like it's our go-to
Right.
response. It's like the world's falling apart. Oh man,
Yeah.
my life sucks, my job sucks, my family sucks, everything sucks, and it really just starts with you.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's amazing. My wife is always saying, you know what, she has itchy words, right? Words that really bother her, like should, right? You should do this. She goes, why should I do that, right? And but she's always changing her language too. She's like, you know what, I need to. If I change my words, I change my mindset. And she's always reminding me about that. And I know you're big on mindset because you are a Spartan competitor and
Yeah.
have put it all out on the field.
I am. Mindset's huge, man. And I mean, it going back to what you just said about words, it's where it all starts. I mean, we usually, I mean, in some cases, we verbalize stuff before we even think about it. So when you start to verbalize things, your thought can follow that. So mindset in a lot of cases starts with not just the words that you think, but the words that you say. And then it's just a doubt. I mean, if the words are incorrect or not the best words, it is a quick downward spiral from there. Because like you were just saying, my job sucks, my life sucks. Typically that starts with one thing, right? One thing happens that triggers you to then start to analyze or tear apart all the other aspects of your life. So when you can kind of coach yourself through it or catch yourself in those early moments with your words and your thoughts, usually you can negate that. And I mean, we've talked about this 100 times, but gratitude, it's, when you can turn something that should be or could be or can be a negative and can find, I don't want to say the positive because that's just so cliche, but just find some form of gratitude, not even necessarily around it, but in your life, it can totally derail the potential of you derailing yourself, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense because I think a lot of times we pull ourselves out of the game. I mean, how many times when you're playing sports, right? And you're like, I gotta get this. Don't drop it, right? At first it was, I gotta catch this ball. And then all of a sudden you go, don't drop it, because you're thinking about what would happen if you drop it instead of going, all right, I'm gonna catch it and then I'm throwing to second, right? When you can think through the entire process, all of a sudden you change what happens in your life. And I think that's a lot in family, right? Because I mean, you have one boy, right?
One boy, and then we have an 18-year-old daughter as well. So we have one little one and one big one.
So are you then a blended family?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's go there, right? Because I think there are a lot of men that listen, who are either divorced, they're reconnecting, they're trying to blend. My brother, he went through a divorce and he's remarried about a year and a half now. And, they've gone through the blending of families, and it's actually been beautiful for them. But I know a lot of people really kind of struggle, especially when there's more than one kid in the home and they're trying to figure out, dad roles, mom's roles. How do I fit? How do I belong? How do I deal with the loss of yesterday and move forward? I mean, there's so many dynamics when you're blending a family. So how has that been for you, and what have you learned through the process?
Oh man, it's been so. We blended very, very early on. So I've been around the entirety of essentially the oldest one's life. So um, I'll tell you, it's the lessons don't stop. For one, I mean, 18 years in, and there's still new lessons that present themselves in the strangest and the most what seem to be inopportune times. But it has been, especially when we had our son, it became really challenging because the dynamic of the blend, you know what I mean? Like the older one gets into the thought of not being looked at the same. So it's like, how do you give the same amount of attention, but make it seem more special, if you will, more direct. So one of the things that's really helped me is just because I'm super busy, probably too busy. I probably work too hard. I probably work too much. Something that I learned a few years ago that has been super impactful for me is the quality of time. So it's not even so, especially as the older one got older, and she's a girl, so her teenage years, she wanted very little to do with us, especially me. So really making that small amount of time that I had with her, not just because of work and responsibilities, but just her schedule and the things that she wanted to do and where she wanted to spend her attention, making that the most impactful that I could. So what has been key for me is making sure that when I'm there with her or either of them, giving them my full attention, making sure that they know that, her especially, making sure that she knew that those 10 or 15 minutes that we had, that was the only thing that mattered to me at that time. Because when you only have 15 minutes with them, a day, as they get older, if half the time you're on the phone, that 7 minutes even seems less than that, because your attention is just, it's taken in so many different directions. So just making sure that when I did have that time, that it was the best quality time that I had, and making her, giving her my full attention, but making her the focal point. It was never about what I wanted to do. And early on, as I've learned and grown, that wasn't always the case. When I was younger and more immature, when we would go and do things, I far too heavily took my feelings into account. If she wanted to do something, she wanted to go to this place, or she wanted to go eat at this place, and I didn't want to, well then, all right, let's talk, let's compromise. And then it finally clicked. Unfortunately, later on in life, that just, like, compromise in those situations is not the best thing. Sometimes it's the best thing just to give, to let them have their way. But what has been imperative in that, what has made that possible, is setting my ego aside. We, especially as men, let our ego detract and deter us to such a just terrible degree, and most of us don't even realize it. So making sure that I had that in check, above all, making sure that my ego was not in play at all, because it wasn't, my feelings weren't important to that. It was, again, making her know that during the limited time that I had, that she was the most important thing in the world. She was the only thing that mattered. And my ego, it did for a long time, got in the way, because I would let my feelings get involved. And so that was something that was huge for me, is, first of all, learning what the ego is. And second of all, learning how, and it's a constant battle, as I'm sure it is the ego in us stupid testosterone driven men is so prevalent. and it's something that I struggle with every single day. Something that I actively have to be aware of, not just in my parenting, but in my relationship. I'll tell you, 99.99765% of the arguments, disagreements, and fights that I have with my wife are strictly because of my ego, or I mean her ego too, but primarily, my ego. There's usually no fact in the situation. It's just my feelings, my ego. And when you can learn how strong of a person, especially as a man, you can actually be, when you can learn to set that ego aside, and hear their feelings, how they really feel. I mean, it's funny. We had a situation today. My son we just bought my wife a new car. It's a used car. And we told my son about it because we were a little bit late to picking him up from his friends last night because we were working on it, which is why we couldn't get together last night. But he saw a picture of the car and he was all amped. But when she picked him up in it today, it wasn't what he expected because it wasn't brand new. It's a couple years old, really nice car, but it wasn't brand new. So he called me to make sure that I knew how unimpressed he was. This is my 9-year-old. How unimpressed he was with the vehicle. Right? And this is a step up from the previous. I mean, we moved up in vehicles from the last one. But he was expecting a Rolls Royce or a Maybach. He's on YouTube all the time, so he thinks that those are realities for the general public. Anyway, in this conversation, as I'm trying to tell him all the reasons, well, this is why, and this is, we did it because of this, and just kind of trying to explain the situation. He's like, "Now, you guys are broke. You and mom are broke. That's why you got this car, because you're broke." And being the strong, egotistical man that I am, I instantly went into defense mode. Instantly, my 9-year-old, just like that, sent me into defense mode, and my whole mood shifted. I mean, this was a great day. I was excited because it's a safer, better car. It was just an all-around better situation. And that he just kicked the milk carton right out from underneath me. And I started to get upset, and I had to catch myself. And I said, "Look, buddy, I love you. We're gonna have to talk about this later," because I was at work. And I told him we've really worked on our communication. We use a rule of 3 that we learned from a relationship coach that we've went to in our area. Great guy, Lou Hancock. Basically, anytime we get with the kids or ourselves, we get above a 3, that conversation is over for now. We excuse ourselves. Hey, I told him, "Hey, I'm above a 3. I need some time. Let me call you back in 15 minutes. Because when you get above a 3, you're going to say things that you don't mean. You're going to react to things that don't matter. So when you can recognize that and give yourself those 15 minutes, not 15 minutes to go screw around, watch TV, 15 minutes to really introspect and figure out what it is about that triggered you, right? And when you do stuff like that, when I did that, obviously it wasn't what he said. Because no one has control over your feelings. No one can make you feel any kind of way. You know what I mean? If someone comes to me and says, "Oh, you're fat," it's not going to mean anything to me because that's not how I feel, right? So it's a word like anything else. Now, if they come to me and say, "You're skinny," that may trigger me because I have some inadequacies about that. Something I've battled with my whole life. Anyway, getting back on point, that triggered me. I stepped away from the situation and realized. Because my first instinct was to get upset with him. Like, how dare you be so ungrateful, and how dare you? And it had nothing to do with him. It was all about the way I was feeling about myself at that moment. So taking the few minutes to introspect and realize where that came from, why that is, and that it's not true, really allowed me. So he called me back about 15 minutes later, and he's like, "Dad, I'm sorry." I said, you don't need to be sorry. Because what you said, it's not your responsibility. My feelings are not your responsibility. Could you have been more grateful? Could you have chosen better words? Probably, but my feelings are my responsibility. Not necessarily. See, we get caught up on fault so much. It's your fault. It's your this, but it's ultimately always our responsibility for our feelings. So just give myself the little bit of time to introspect. Allowed for that conversation when he called me back to go so smooth that I was actually able to turn that into a teaching moment. And we got off the phone in a great place. But without that self-awareness, without recognizing that my ego was what was getting in the way of at that point, the relationship with my son, because in that moment, I was frustrated. I was triggered. I instantly went defense mode. But it was all ego. I know I'm not broke, and even if I am, I mean, that's all in the eye of the beholder, right? So, and I know he doesn't know what that means, but in that moment, I didn't realize that. So I was triggered. I wanted to react. I didn't. I gave myself a minute, and that was huge for the whole situation. Because had I not, that situation would have went me getting upset, probably raising my voice with him. Then that would have triggered my wife, and then she would have got involved, and that could have easily snowballed into a really bad situation. But yeah, the ego is a nasty thing.
And it's so funny how your kids can check you, right? I mean, that's such that, I'm listening to you and I'm laughing because here's this 9-year-old going, Dad, how come I don't have a Bugatti in the car? It's like, dude, do you realize what I do to provide a home for you, a car, and all the activities that you get to do, right? But kids don't have perspective, right? They look at what they see on YouTube, social media, what their friends do, and their perspective and their expectation is that I should be living this way, right? And I love that you have a way to self-check yourself, to go, you know what? This is me getting offended. This is me allowing
by a 9-year-old
my ego to get squashed by a 9-year-old, right? And I think a lot of times the problem that we have in men, especially when it comes time to where we're disciplining the kids or we have an issue and we feel like we're disrespected. I mean, how many of us want to go, I'm the dad, just do what I say, right? And it's really because we're acting out of a place of disrespect, of being disrespected, instead of going, all right, what is the core issue here? And how do I talk through it with my children in a way that is beneficial for them, that they gain perspective, that they gain insight, that they get a little peek into dad's side of things, but also you being humble enough to go, you know what? Yeah, I'm not making the kind of money to drive a Bugatti or a Maserati or a Ferrari or even, whatever it is, right? And that's okay because I'm happy with what I'm doing for my family.
And that's so huge in so many ways, because when you live in a place of lack, when you're constantly focusing, going back to what you said earlier about when you think about dropping the ball, right? When you focus on what you don't have, whether even if it's to the aspect of, oh, I want to get out of debt, or I want, you're focusing on debt. So when you focus on what you're lacking, even if it's with the intent of being a positive, when you focus on the lack, that's what you get. One of the best analogies I've ever heard is when you're doing like whitewater rafting, the instructor will never tell you, don't avoid that rock, or don't paddle towards that rock, or they'll always tell you paddle this way. They won't say, hey, we need to avoid that rock, because instantly what does the mind do? Rock. And then before you know it, you're paddling on the rock, because that's where he instructed your mind to go. Even though he said, don't go, whatever you do, don't go to that rock. Your mind says, oh, rock, shiny object, lack. So when we start down that path, so focusing on the lack is going to get you more of the lack in every situation. So it's a challenging thing to focus on the things that you want without focusing on the things that you don't want. But that's where, going back to gratitude, when you show gratitude for the things that you have accomplished, and learn to feel the feelings that you want, right? When the embodiment of having the thing that you are going after, and simply focusing on the actions, the process, and learning to love the process of whatever it is you're doing. Because I'll tell you, me and my wife had, we're coming up on our next month, our 17th anniversary. And thank you. It's been a process. It's been a lot of work. So that, man, I don't know, there was somewhere I was going to go with that, but focusing on when you're constantly focusing on the problems, this is what I don't like, this is what she does that pisses me off, that's all you're going to get. And even if that's not what you get, that's what you're going to focus on. So that's what you're going to see. But it's funny, going back to what you said about disrespect, my, when I took that disrespect from my son, because that's exactly what it was. I took it as disrespect. The reality is he's 9 years old. Do you think that he intended to disrespect me? Do you think he's like, I'm going to be mean? That's not, no. So it is up to me to recognize in that point that disrespect is not coming from him. That disrespect is coming from me. I'm implying that. He's not intentionally trying to disrespect me. He's telling me how he feels. That's it. He's not meaning. When we get older, we can intentionally be disrespectful to people, but when you're that young, that's not what you're thinking. You know what I mean? You're just thinking, oh, you're expressing your feelings. So
yeah,
it's completely up to me to take that as disrespect or realize that wasn't the intent and that the issue is within me, because I'm the one that took it. That I'm the one that placed that meaning of disrespect on that. But why? Why was it? And it comes again, that specific situation came from a place of lack. Something I constantly have struggled with my entire life, and even probably more now than ever, is imposter syndrome. And that's where that stems from. Not feeling good enough. Just from childhood trauma and all that. So having tools to stop myself in those situations and get to the root, then you can, when you do that, when you get to the root, then you can not talk yourself out of it, but you can check the boxes as to why that's not the truth, right? But without that self-awareness, it's hard.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that's an important factor that a lot of men wrestle with, in that they don't feel good enough. They don't feel good enough as a father. They don't feel good enough as a provider. They don't feel good enough in their relationship with their wife. And I think this feeling of not good enough creates an unintentional barrier to connect with your kids, right? And with your wife. So talk about that a little bit, because I think there are a lot of men that struggle with, man, I could have done this. Man, when I was younger, if I would have gone to college, or if I would have taken this opportunity, I think back for years, there was a time when Judy and I were going through college that I got 2 job offers on the same day. And one, I loved working with this company. They were a newer startup, and they just couldn't pay me what this other offer. I mean, it was a significant difference, right? And I really wrestled with that for a long time because of where we were at the time and going to school and where we were with kids. I took the one that gave more money. It wasn't as rewarding, but I saw it as an avenue to support my family in a better way. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't as fun as this other one. And for years, I would often go, man, I wonder what if I would have taken that? Yeah, I would have made less money, but man, I would have been part of building something, and it would have been fun. And I think a lot of us men get stuck looking in the rearview mirror at a decision or a series of decisions that we went through in a season of our life, and we're judging ourselves against yesterday instead of who we are today.
Right. So it's funny. The only time that you should look to the past is to see how far you've come. That's it. And when I say that, that is when you can take, let's take your situation, for example. So you're focused on, I could have been a part. If I would have done this, I could have been a part of building something. Not realizing. So, you've built 2 successful podcasts. You've built a successful software company. So you've done what you wanted to do. You just didn't do it on maybe the timeline that you initially wanted to. But we don't look. You are who you are today because of that decision that you didn't make. Right. So one of the best things in the world that I've ever heard, and this was pertinent because I had a rough upbringing. I had amazing parents. They loved me the best they could, but man, they made some terrible choices. They caused a lot of trauma. They caused a lot of issues that I've had to work through in my life. They're both unfortunately gone now. But I had a lot of resentment for years and years and years and years. And one of the best things that I've ever heard was, it was actually, the Netflix, Tony Robbins, I'm Not Your Guru. Did you ever watch that?
I haven't.
Amazing. He has this line in here where he says, I'll make this quick, but this girl gets up and she says, "Oh, I want to be better with my diet," is her issue. And he breaks it down and come to find out it's actually, that's all, the issue is rooted in her father, the love from her father. And it's, oh, my father did this, my father did that. And he asked her, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm successful. I'm this, I'm a go-getter. And he said, well, here's the reality. If your father had been the father that you had wanted, there's a good chance that you wouldn't be this woman that you love today. So you have to be grateful for the things that I'm going to put this in the context that it was taught to me, but you have to appreciate and be grateful for the things that your parents did for you negatively as much as what they did positively, because you are the person you are today because of both. Just like this, you're the man that you are today because of the decisions you made and the decisions you didn't make. So would Jody Sedrick be the successful man that he is today had you taken that other opportunity? Who knows, right? But you love and respect and are grateful for the man that you are today. So focusing on what didn't happen is irrelevant, right? So
that's really powerful. I mean, that really is powerful, because I'm thinking about, and sorry I interrupted you, but for years when I started getting into management and when I started owning my own business, I had two men in my mind of what I wanted to be and what I didn't want to be as managers, right? So I was able to take what was good out of the one that I really admired, and I took the bad out of the other one and go, I'm never going to be that person, right? And so recognizing that, choosing between bad or good or not taking an opportunity and taking opportunities, define who you are just as much as the things that you're doing in the future. Yep.
And so that's it's kind of cliche, but looking at everything as an opportunity, it's hard to do in finding the silver lining, but that's a great example, because the reality in that moment when you had that bad manager, I'm sure you weren't thinking, man, one day this is going to benefit me because I'm going to know what not to do. You were thinking, no, this guy's a jerk. I hate everything. This sucks having to deal with this guy. But that struggle that you went through allowed you to realize, take the best of this and the worst of this, and become the leader that you are because of that negative and that positive situation. But in that moment, you didn't think that. In that moment, you didn't think, man, this is going to be a pivotal moment because this is going to shape who I am as the leader down the line. So
and that's a funny phrase that you say, right? Because you say, I didn't realize that it was a pivotal moment. And I've almost come to the realization that every decision now is a pivotal moment, right? No matter how small, how significant it is either going to pivot you this way or it's going to pivot you that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you are the captain of that decision. And sometimes you wake up and go, man, I really like that decision. Other times you wake up and you're like, wow, that was a mistake. And that led to a trail of tears and anxiety.
But guess what?
What did I learn through the process?
Yep. And guess what? Just like you pivoted this way or that way, if you pivot this way and it's wrong, guess what you get to do? You can pivot right back. It may take you a little bit longer, but boy, you're going to learn some stuff. You're going to learn some stuff on that wrong pivot that is going to be impactful down the line. So we talked about this before, but the Patriot missiles, man, they set their target and they make little tiny adjustments until they reach. It's not straight shot. It's constantly adjusting. But if all you do is the right decisions, you don't know how to pivot. If you never have to pivot, how do you learn how to pivot? So, again, the past is looking to the past for anything but the good is one of the worst things you can do, in my opinion. Again, the past is the only time you should look to the past is to realize how far you have come. To look back and say, that's where I was, but now I'm here. Not look back and say, oh man, this happened and that sucked. This happened and that sucked. It sucked, but you're here now because of this. And you mentioned something earlier about not being as far along or not this or I should have done this or I should have went to college. The reality, one of my favorite quotes is, "It is never too late to be what you could have been." And until you decide that it is not, and until you quit, you have an opportunity to continually. You said this, I think it was, I feel like it was a post you recently made, but it was, I think it was when your workout one. I was thinking this last week, I almost did a video on this, but tiny little bits of action, little tiny progressions lead to a massive result. And that, I mean, the 1% rule, if you become 1% better every single day, which in the moment seems like very little, right? 1%, I can do that. That's a 365% improvement. That's a 3x. You're 3 times better at the end of the year if it's just 1%. Now, is that realistic? 1% every day? Maybe not. But even 1% a month, that's 12% better of a human being, of a businessman, of a father every single year. So we get caught up in the carrot, right? This is the goal. I'll be happy when I get this promotion, when I get this house, I'll be happy when. If that's the mode that you live by, you will always be in a mode of I will be happy when. Because when you get that house, it's going to be the next thing. So you have to learn to love the process, and not just the process of business, the process of life, parenting, every missed opportunity, every bad conversation, every aggravation. It is a opportunity to take stock and to reflect and figure out what could have been better. And then all you have to do is implement it. None of us know how to be fathers. None of us. None of us. No. There's no manual, obviously, but it is, even if there was, the manual would be wrong, because kids and people and how you react to them, everyone is different. Every kid is different. My daughter is completely opposite from my son. It's funny when my son started school, my daughter and wife took him to drop him off, and he went to the same elementary as my daughter. And she was a handful, and she walked him in, and my daughter and my wife walked him into the office, and my daughter kind of handed my son off to the principal, said, "Oh, you're gonna love him. He's a stupid little rule follower." So, but the point of that is they are completely different kids, completely different. Same parents, same upbringing, completely different.
That is so funny because because kids are so different, right? I mean, and that is like the perfect example. That would be something I would say. Oh yeah, this is the straight arrow. You'll like him.
Yep.
Wasn't the challenge.
We had a 9-year head start. So we had 9 years of parenting with my daughter before my son came along. So we thought we had it in the bag. We thought this one was going to be a breeze. We've got this figured out, right? At least these first 9 years. No, it was a completely different parenting. I mean, he's a completely different personality. So what worked with her didn't work with him, and what would trigger her wouldn't trigger him, or vice versa. So we had to learn it all over again. It was completely different. So, but that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it.
That is exactly not only what happened with my 4 kids, but when we adopted, right? I remember very distinctly when we were going through the adoption process, they wanted us to go through parenting classes. And I'm like, dude, I already have 4 kids. I don't need parenting classes. And oh boy, everything that I thought I knew, it was thrown out the window.
And that's what
it was a different game, right? Because not only was I bringing children that had, broken hearts and had gone through trauma, very severe trauma, I was bringing them into my home, and all of the rules that I thought I knew, they didn't apply, right? I had to learn how to parent a hurt child. I had to learn how to not feel just upset when I was
Mm-hmm.
disrespected or not listened to. I had to learn how to communicate in a different way. I had to learn how to love. I had to learn how to build trust in a way that I was not used to, right? And recognizing that as a dad is one thing. Learning it is a
Mm-hmm.
completely different thing. And embracing the journey and being humble enough to go, wow, dude, I don't have a clue. And I need to, I mean, until we adopted kids, I had never ever read a self-help book. Never. Right? I'm like, oh, I'll figure it out. I was arrogant and prideful. I was like, I'll figure it out. God will help me, whatever. Right? But dude, now I devour them
Mm-hmm.
because I recognize that somebody has put their experience, their lessons, their wisdom in a book that cost me $14 to $25 that I can listen to on Audible. And dude, it has given me so much insight and wisdom that's designed to give me a shortcut.
Books are the most underrated thing in the entire world, especially self-help or books that are designed to make you a better person, because they are so. It is still so unbelievable how underutilized they are. And I mean, yeah, I didn't find this stuff till I was 35. I'm 41 now. If I had, if I didn't find them, is I don't want to think about the man that I would be today. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna think about wishing that I had found them sooner. I found them when I needed to, and they've been an
Yeah.
absolute game changer for me. Because I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know that our relationship, me and Danielle's, would still be. I don't think we'd still be together if it wasn't for that. For self, I mean, books and courses and just self improvement as a whole. Not only still together, but we are better now than we have ever been. We are more in love. We are more. I mean, everything. Our relationship is better through 16 years of absolute chaos. We are stronger and better and more in love than we've ever been. And that every day that gets better. But a lot of that, I mean, it's funny. We had a lot of problems, and I used to put all the blame on her. Okay, she does this and it pisses me off. She doesn't do this. But it was all me. It was all me. Not that our problems were all my fault, but it was all my responsibility. I wanted to blame her, but the reality is the responsibility on how I react to what she says or what she does is strictly on me. And I'll tell you, as men, it's unfortunate we get in this, especially when we get because kids, they take a toll on your relationship. There's less time. There's less. I mean, intimacy goes out the window. It becomes such a chore. And as men, it is unfortunate that we get in this mindset of feeling like we're owed something, right? Feeling like because we're married that they should want. Almost like it's owed to us, intimacy. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned, it was a book called I can't think of the name, Way of the Superior Man. Love, especially intimacy, it has to especially when you have children, you continuously have to earn that. It's never owed to you, and if you put the effort in to earning it, that's a terrible term for it, but earning it like you did in the beginning, it will pay dividends like you will not believe.
Yeah.
I am more expressive to her. I am more showing of my feelings and towards her now than ever before. And unfortunately, in most relationships, it's not like that. It's the further along you go, the less you stop giving, the more you start expecting. And it's actually the opposite. The further you're in a relationship, the more you have to give, the more you have to do, the more you have to show. But again, us egotistical men, we expect that it's deserved because I provide and I'm here and I've stuck around. That's not the case. That's not the case. And there is so much more on the other side if you put a little work and effort into still making them feel wanted and appreciated and loved and just desired, man. Your partner feeds off of that in that area. And I just see so many guys. I have so many conversations with guys that complain about it. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing about it? Well, why should I do anything? I provide, I go to work. No, that's not the way this works, man. That's not
enough.
No,
it's not enough.
Nope.
It's like when you were dating, you were in hot pursuit all the time. Yes, you were working, you were going to school, but you made time.
Yep.
You talked to her, you connected, you opened your heart, you shared your fears, you shared your frustrations.
And you listened.
And you listened. Yeah, you would stay up till 2 and 3 a.m. at night and you'd
on the
still
phone
be talking.
just talking.
Right, just talking. And then now, dude, you can't even trouble yourself to get off the couch to go get her a glass of water. Oh, I'm watching the game, right? And it's like somewhere along the line, because you're the provider, you're working hard, you think that just goes away. And no, that has to, like you said, you have to double down on that. You got to do even more than that. So I just
not just do more, but show more. Show more. I am intentional. I am very intentional. And the more intentional I am, the easier it comes. But I am intentional about showing her how into her I am. And that is, that is more public displays of affection. That is more, just whistling as she goes across the kitchen, like making her feel desired. Like, when you stop that, there's trouble shortly after. But and they test us, man. They without even thinking about it, they test us without thinking about it. They test us on stuff that we don't even realize. We want to be the provider, but then when they test us on that, which is what we're asking of them, then it's turned around in the negative. So there's you cannot stop learning as a man, as a father, as a parent. Learning and growing will pay the most dividends out of anything I've ever experienced. Anyway, my life is better now on all fronts than I ever could have imagined.
That's awesome.
And going back to what I said earlier, let me finish this. The only time when I look to my past to realize how far I've come, it makes this even better, because where I'm at now is something I never thought possible.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to have to do a round 2 and maybe even a round 3, because there's so much to unpack here. In the future, I'd like to unpack overcoming childhood trauma, because I think a lot of men struggle with that. And I'd also like to go in deeper about, building and maintaining and pursuing your relationship, because I think a lot of men get lost. Families get destroyed because they lose that aspect of their relationship. So, man, dude, I always love talking to you. It's always so fun.
Likewise.
We're already 45 minutes into it.
Oh,
I'm like, no, dude, we got. I know it's crazy. So we're gonna have to do a round 2, maybe a round 3. But I thank you so much for taking the time. So
it is my pleasure. I love Jody. You're one of my favorite human beings. I love you to death, man. I'm happy to do it. So you let me know when you want to do it, and I'll make the time. This was amazing. I'm grateful that you thought of me to come on here. It really means the world to me, man.
No, well, thank you. And guys that are listening, thank you so much for tapping in every week. Please do me a favor, go out, subscribe, share the show. Really trying to, it's hard to believe. I was looking at it. I have over 200 episodes. I think this is going to be my 219th or something like that. Wow. So many episodes of great conversations with men, stories, experiences, insights. So go check it out, share, please do that for me. And you guys know we're going to check you same time, same bat channel, just next week right here on Father's Fire. See ya.